Hello, I'm Jean Pete, and I welcome you back to our show, Better Living. Better Living is brought to you by the Homestead Hope Foundation and is sponsored by Homestead Hospice, where commitment to education and premier hospice care helps patients and families through life's most important journey. Thank you for joining me again this week. Today's guest is Mallie Sharafat, CEO of Homestead Hospice and founder of the Homestead Hope Foundation. We're going to talk a little bit about an overview of hospice and why it's important to get educated about hospice before the crisis occurs. And then we're going to talk to you about a wonderful foundation that Mallie has created to give back to seniors in the communities that they serve. So Mallie, welcome. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So first, tell us a little bit about Homestead Hospice and how it came to be.
Well, Homestead Hospice was established in 2006, and then right after the experience I had with my mother-in-law, and Olame Machen was diagnosed in 2005 with a bone cancer, and unfortunately nobody told her about the hospice until the very last, days. And then it touched me very much because early on they knew that there is no cure. But this lady had to endure all those chemotherapies, radiations, and then 79 years old, her little body just couldn't take it. And then I saw during her hospice stay how much that she clinged down that life to see her son who lives in Germany. And when I took my daughter to see her grandmother in Tennessee, it was a really touching moment. And I was in crossroad in that time in my life. I was going to change a career from owning the factories, furniture factories actually, to something more that keep me in Atlanta with my daughter. And then I said to myself, I can do this. I can actually help this process because I think hospice really can help people, can help the emotional. They can get the support, and they can actually be comfortable at their own home. 99% of the people, when they ask, where do you like to die? They say, my own bed. And I think everybody should be granted that wish.
I hear that so much as folks who listen to the show weekly know that I've grown up in the hospice industry for the past 15 years and worked in hospice and had the pleasure of serving people that are faced with a terminal illness as well. And what you said, Mallie, you have to have a heart for hospice.
Yes.
And that you decided to go into the hospice business because of your own personal experience does not surprise me. But what a wonderful combination to have an experienced business owner who knows how to run a business and run a team efficiently, go through that hospice experience and say, how can I put these two impactful experiences on my life into one body of work. And I know you personally, and I know the service that you've put in the heart that you've put into Homestead Hospice so that you can ensure that you deliver the proper hospice experience and affect the people that are going through what you personally went through yourself. And I think that's what makes your company so great. Your personal experiences in every single delivery of service that your team provides.
Well, in my opinion, in the customer service, patient care, it should not just said lightly when the people they're going through hospice and when they experience this difficult journey. And then I think the word we cannot do should not be in the picture. We will have to find a way to grant their wishes. In how many ways? We may have to bring outside help. But then they live so long, they give us so much to this society. We are the flowers that they seeded us before. And I just really want to, see that, customer service, patient care to be done in a wholeheartedly.
It's our turn to give back to them for their contributions through their whole life.
And no, we cannot do. It's not the option. We have to find a way to grant their wishes. Even though if we have to maybe discharge them and give them to another, institute that they can get whatever they need.
Whatever they need. And I know by personally knowing you that is truly the story for Homestead Hospice. One of the other things that you said a little bit ago was your Ola May had bone cancer.
Yes.
But she really was in denial, as was the family, about where they were at in the process, because nobody was really having those direct, candid conversations with what truly was going on. And it's difficult to have that first conversation with a family or a patient about truly where they're at in the process. But as a hospice worker, I know we hear so often, I wish I knew about you all sooner. I wish I chose hospice sooner. I wish that I didn't live in denial for so long, because it's made the quality of life so great. What are some words of wisdom that you want to give out to the folks in the communities that you serve regarding making that difficult choice for hospice?
I think it's starting by just asking questions and then talking with the people that they have had experience with hospice, home health, and then any other type of benefits that is coming to them. And just familiarizing themselves, and they will know when the time comes in. On the Ola May situation, she was such a lovely woman in a small community. Even the doctor that she went to, that was one of her son's friends. Even doctor did not want to let go of her or accept it. Doctor was more in denial. And a nurse that she was there in a community of 15,000 in Elizabethtown, Tennessee, the nurse was the kid that she knew from the neighborhood. And then, but family, they should have asked more about the benefits that she should have received. She went through a lot of unnecessary treatment that from beginning, even doctor didn't want to give up on her. I think they just should ask questions. That's all. They don't have to make a decision right there. Familiarize that hospice is not a death sentence. Hospice is a support that they guide them through just the comfort. And when they don't come, hospice doesn't come and kill. Hospice does not come and tell you what to do, how to live, but it gives you support in your turf.
And what's happening with the body, we can't control. But what we can control is the experience that the patient and family has while that disease process continues. And if you can increase quality of life, every day is a gift. And if you have good quality, and I talk about my experience with my own dad on a lot of these shows, but I will tell you that we brought hospice in too late, like Ola May. But those last 3 weeks of life, when we did have hospice, they got him out of the bed and into the chair in the living room where he could look out the window and hear the birds. And because he was in a chair and not the bed, my sister could come and talk with him. It was too difficult for her to see him in the bed. And because my sister could come and talk with him, my mother was busy making tea and baking bread. And the quality of life those last 3 weeks for all three of them improved because of hospice. And they still, 7 years later, talk about the conversations they had in that living room during those last 3 weeks of his life. And so, folks, hospice is a scary word. A terminal illness is scary. We can't get around what's happening to the body, but we certainly can come in and affect that quality of life and help you have those conversations and give you those lasting memories. And so I also have a heart for hospice. I know the work that Mallie is able to bring through Homestead Hospice personally. Don't fear hospice. There is hope in hospice. But that brings me to your Hope Foundation. The Homestead Hope Foundation gives back to the communities, and it's all about education, because you said, we want to educate you. Don't wait till the crisis. Get informed. Know what your options are. So talk a little bit about the establishment of the Homestead Hope Foundation.
Well, working in hospice, you see day in, day out, how people, they come to hospice late, how people, they don't even know there is a local, community program exists. They can be sitting with them while their loved one going to work. And then just seeing the family, they're just not aware of all the possible resources available for them. Sometimes people, they even scared to use them. They think at the end they're going to get a big fat bill that they're going to ask them to pay for it. Homestead Hope Foundation came about that we can educate, and we can have the newspapers, we can have website, and we can have call centers to just answer people's question and guide them to the information that they need in order to make a right choice for themselves. we set up, although we temporarily help the folks in need until we can have a permanent solution in place, I went on search for a website. I wanted to search for a housing option. Jean, I think I got about 1,000 sites about senior housing option. Boy, everybody was contradicting to one another, not solid information. And then we said, let's make a Google of the senior living. Let's connect folks to the raw data. A, they need to understand what it is. B, they need to understand where to go find the, answers to their question. C, how can you qualify if this housing option is good for them? And D, far more important, how they can monitor it. These are the questions that everybody wanted to have, and we decided to find other nonprofit organizations that they don't sell anything, and then we connect them to them, and they can go find the answers. And more important is that we wanted to find the locators that actually give them the options around their surroundings. I liked my mom to live close by me until every day when I go to work, when I come back from the work, I can stop by and say hello. The locators, if you go to the website, you can see the locators. They can find, facilities, doctors, geriatrics, pharmacies who deliver, the doctors who visit you at the house. The locators, they can find all the resources within the 10 miles around your house.
And it's an easy one-stop shop. And that's what your vision was. I want to provide an easy one-stop resource for seniors and their families to find the information they need to, as you said, make the choices that are best for them, to empower them to live the best quality of life that they can.
Before the crisis hits.
Before the crisis occurs. And it's all about educating and informing. And the website is separated very easily into sections: financial, housing, community outreach, social services. What am I missing?
At-home services. We are working on the supplies that they want and the companies that they deliver right at their homes.
And if someone goes to the website looking for information, and let's just say there's something that's not up there, because I know it's constantly being added to. There's a blog, too, so they could type in a blog saying, hey, I'm looking for such and such information. So truly, even if it's not there, it's still the one-stop shop where we can respond and answer their questions.
Well, since we don't have a call centers right now, but we do have an information hotline that then they can request. Well, Ginny, yourself, you're running the blog on the Hospice Foundation, but we have Mickey who's checking every day. The information is being requested by email. And then we have about 6 or 7 social workers on staff right now at Homestead Hospice, and they volunteer to find the answers and then, give to these folks until we can financially. We don't have any backers for our foundation. Only Homestead Hospice does all the support of the foundation. But hopefully we will have a call centers that they can get at least,
There's a bigger vision to grow this organization. And that brings me to the next point, because it's very exciting. It is a 501c3, and you did just seed the board, and you're having some more fundraisers to raise the money so that you can give back to the communities. Now, Homestead Hope Foundation is not just about educating and informing, but it's also about giving back to the seniors in the communities.
Yes.
And so we also have a guest here, Allison Finley. Allison, I hadn't introduced you yet, but thank you for waiting so long for me to introduce you, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jean.
Do you want to talk about your role with the Homestead Hope Foundation?
I'm wearing a lot of hats right now, but my background is heavily into nonprofits and fundraising, and we do have a lot of exciting projects that we will be rolling out one after another. But the one that I really want to focus on right now, because of this particular time of year, is a project we're calling Home Sweet Homestead, which is something that it kind of hit me about 2 years ago. I was writing a newspaper column, and I noticed that people were always contacting me saying that was a great idea for something that I could do with my children or with my club or with my organization to raise money to give back to the community. So it dawned on me that we could develop this particular project. And the idea is that we have 3 different plans for doll houses. And the doll house is a symbol for what hospice is about, which is keeping the patient in their home. So if you're a beginner, we have a beginner dollhouse that's pretty simple to build, on up to a medium size and then a large dollhouse. And what we're asking people in the community to do is to contact me at the office, and we will talk to them about what they can do in terms of getting the plans to build one of these dollhouses, after which they can raffle it off.
And there's 3 different designs, so don't be scared away that it's not some kind of a project that you'd be capable of doing.
Right.
Are there pictures of these dollhouses on the website so that people can go and choose?
We will be putting those pictures up this week. And actually, for anybody who's feeling nervous, they are all based on a dollhouse that I built for myself when I was 12 years old. So if I can do it when I'm 12.
and this is a great idea because it is about keeping people in their homes.
Right.
So I love that we're giving back to seniors by creating dollhouses and getting the community involved in that whole project.
And this is the perfect time for people to be thinking about this. Teachers who have clubs at schools are thinking about what projects they're going to be doing in the fall with their clubs. Church youth groups are thinking about what they're going to be doing this summer. Civic organizations, even a family could just get together, multiple generations of a family, and do this as a project.
Right. And what strikes my mind is Boy Scout, Cub Scout, Webelos, Girl Scouts, Brownie groups. It's a great project,
teams.
And then you can earn a badge.
Right. And then when they either raffle it off or auction off the dollhouse, the money goes back to Hope Foundation, to a fund that is specifically designed for emergency assistance for seniors who maybe their government check didn't stretch to the end of the month and they don't have food, or they have a utility bill that needs to be paid. So everybody who does this knows exactly where their money is going. It is for the immediate emergencies.
Okay, so let's tell folks again how they can get information on the dollhouse, what website and phone number and email address they can go to get more information.
They can call me directly if they want to at 770-966-0077, extension 29, or they can go to the homesteadhospice.com website and find me there too.
Okay, great. So, Mallie, let's talk about some of the fundraising that has already occurred for the Homestead Hope Foundation. And are there other events that are coming up for other people that perhaps don't want to build a dollhouse? How they can help Homestead Hope Foundation give back to the seniors and their families in the communities?
Well, we are having a company picnic at the 12th of the May. And we're going to ask our seniors to attend if they like to, and then have an afternoon with us. The purpose of this is that we like to, have seniors get volunteer with us. They go to the senior centers and they go to the rec centers. Especially Roswell has a very wonderful, senior rec centers. And then we thought getting them involved, maybe in the interest of and their family, to come and volunteer for the Homestead Hospice and Homestead Hope Foundation. And of course, the purpose of this gathering is not a fundraising, but then is a community involvement. And then Allison suggested that we should have a wine tasting at Botanical Garden, and then that we will have a concert over there. And in September, and then right around September 9th, because that's a Grandparents' Day, National Grandparents' Day. So far, we don't have any more than that, but Allison is very much have a lot of ideas. I am not familiar with much fundraising. I never done a fundraising before.
You're good at spending it.
I'm very good at spending
She's good at giving it back to the communities. That's why we need Allison to raise it. And all of you in these communities, really on a serious note, we've done shows on the economic impact of the current housing market and job losses, and lots of nonprofits looking for money. And you see some of the big ones about research for different diagnoses and health issues in children and all of that. But, our seniors, and I'm a little biased because I've worked in the senior industry for a long time, but our seniors tend to be forgotten. So I love the idea of the Homestead Hope Foundation focusing on seniors and their families, educating and informing them to make the right choices for them before the crisis occurs, and then also giving back to these folks. I love what you said, Mallie. They were the seed so that we could become flowers. Yeah. There's so much gratitude in my own life personally to be a woman that doors were open for me before I even got there. I didn't have to fight. A little bit, because there's still a little bit of that going on. And that's just speaking about a senior female. There's so much contribution that has happened. For us to have the lives that we have, we need to give back. And there's not enough out there to give back to this population. And so I love that the Homestead Hope Foundation is dedicated around
Well, Jean, at
seniors
least
and their
if you don't
families.
have a compassion to give back, at least think about it this way. We will be a senior one day. Let's
Okay.
teach our children how to take care of us.
You're
By
right.
teaching them, by getting involved. We basically teaching them how to get involved with our life.
And again, you can contact the Homestead Hope Foundation if you want to get involved, if you want to donate, if you want to sponsor an event, if you want to build one of our dollhouses for Homestead. What is it called, Allison? Home Sweet Homestead Project.
Home Sweet Homestead. And because you're talking about giving back, let me point out that was one of the ideas I had behind this project, because we need to teach our children when they're still young that they need to be giving back to the community. So this is a project that parents can do with their children, or adults who run a children's organization can get involved in, because they're never too young. Kids 8 years old can be doing this.
Or even better, for a teacher or someone or a Cub Scout group who wants to do this project, bring it to an assisted living facility and work on it with the seniors. I personally have a subjective opinion that we don't have enough connection between children and seniors.
Absolutely.
And life, and we're missing wonderful wisdom that could be instilled in a young person that they'll take with them for the rest of their life, because we're losing that connection. So I love this project.
And somebody's already mentioned to me a senior center is full of people who know how to crochet. Think about the rugs they could be making for the dollhouses.
So if you want to get more involved, please do go to the Homestead Hope Foundation website at www.homesteadhopefoundation.org, or you can contact Allison at afinley@homesteadhospice.net, or you can contact Allison at
770-966-0077, extension 29.
And on that note, as we end the show, there's never enough time. It is National Volunteer Week, April 15th through the 21st, and it's time to recognize and celebrate the thousands of people that give selflessly to folks in the communities that they serve. And so if you do have a heart to volunteer, I know Homestead Hospice is always looking for volunteers, or you can volunteer your time to help the Homestead Hope Foundation raise the money they need to give back to the communities.
We'd love the help.
Allison, thanks for joining us today. And Mallie, it's a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be right back after this quick break, so stay tuned. Hello, I'm Jean Pete, and I welcome you back to our show, Better Living. Better Living is brought to you by the Homestead Hope Foundation and is sponsored by Homestead Hospice, where commitment to education and premier hospice care helps patients and families through life's most important journey. Thank you for joining us again this week. We have another great show in store, as I have attorney Paul J. Fleming here to talk to us today about all kinds of different things regarding real estate law and the economy and the recession, and how the real estate market has put people in some situations that are really difficult, and he's going to give some opinions and advice on how not to feel bad about where you're at and how to get out of where you're at. Is that right?
That's correct.
Welcome, Attorney Fleming.
Well, thank you very much.
Nice to have you with us today.
Thank you.
So why don't we begin by talking about how did you get involved with real estate law, and what is the scope of your business?
Well, I was a real estate broker for 15 years, and in the 80s, Louisiana economy virtually stopped. So at the tender age of 40, I decided that I was going to become an attorney, and started law school when I was 41, graduated when I was 44, moved my family to Atlanta and started over.
At the tender age of 40.
44.
44.
Yeah, I graduated when I was 44. I actually started when I was 39. I had to finish my undergraduate degree, and then I started law school.
And why real estate law?
I thought it was happy law. You know, if everybody comes into my office and I did a good job, they would leave happy. And so for 15, 16 years, I practiced happy law.
So that's why you went into law. You were looking for some happiness at 44?
I had always wanted to be an attorney. When I was in the Army, I was involved in some court martials, and I enjoyed the law a lot. But I was so busy getting married, having kids, starting a career that I just never went. But then when the economy stopped in the 80s in Louisiana, I decided to go to law school.
Well, good for you. That's a life-changing moment. So tell us about your practice and how maybe it's changed since you entered into real estate law in the 80s.
Well, I actually started in law in 1992, graduated in 92, and for 16 years did closings, real estate closings, did anywhere from 80 to 120, 130 closings a month for 16 years. Then the economy changed, and so now we're doing 5, maybe 10 closings a month, and 90% of my practice now is counseling people who are in pain.
And you know, you talk about the 80s. Bring us back to those days so we can talk about the cyclical nature of this market. And I do want to get into the economic situation right now and in the past 5 years and what people have been through and how we can help them through it, because we can. And it's not the end of the world. But let's start back to, well, the 90s when you became a real estate attorney. What were you seeing in terms of the interest rates at the time and the closing and the average house price and where people were at psychologically with buying homes?
Yeah, it was happy times. Houses were appreciating. People could use the equity in their house to go on vacation, buy a car. People were moving up. You know, you buy a starter house, 4 or 5 years later, you buy a mid-sized house, and then 10, 15, 20 years later, you buy your dream house. All of that's changed. People can't resell their houses right now. Mm-hmm. The vast majority of houses that are selling are either foreclosures or short sales, and homeowners can't compete with that.
And let's talk about that, because I think it did start probably, about 5 years ago?
Yeah, 4 or 5 years ago. At least 4 years ago, maybe 5. In 2007, the end of 2007.
And see, I'm one of those folks because I moved down here to Atlanta. And for you folks listening in Phoenix, I know that market has taken a huge hit in terms of real estate as well. So this really applies to whether you're listening to us here in Atlanta or in the Gulf Coast, New Orleans, Arizona. But I do remember because I actually sold a home in New England at the height of the real estate market in 2005 and moved down here and bought a home at the height of the real estate boom here in Atlanta. And so now that's exactly where you're at. The values have gone down. Good thing for us now, the rates have gone down as well, though.
But nobody can get financing.
But you can't get financing. Yeah. There's no equity. So all of these 6, 7 years we've been paying on our homes, there's nothing to take out because your home is worth so much less. And we've had a slew of jobs being cut and lost. And so that's left a lot of people with foreclosures and bankruptcies. And you're seeing people in this kind of a predicament that psychologically people are really having a hard time with labeling themselves as someone who is bankrupt and has gone through a foreclosure. Are you seeing that more and more?
Yeah, people come to me in pain. I think it's my job to make them feel better about where they are and how they got here and how they're going to get out of it. And I always tell them that bad things happen to good people. This is not their fault. Somebody in Atlanta does not control the national economy. They don't control how hard it is to get a loan right now. I mean, there are people out there with credit scores of 800 that can't get a loan. In my circumstance, I bought my office building in December of 2007. Since then, it's lost 30% of its value. There were 5 buildings for sale at the same time in this little complex. 9. 5 of them went into foreclosure. 5 years later, 2 of them are still sitting there. And people can't finance them. There are people who have been interested in 2 of those buildings and they just can't get loans. And so I also tell people that this won't last. As I said, I went through this in the 80s, and I look back at the 80s now and say it was the best thing that ever happened to me because I never would have taken the time to go to law school. We never would have moved to Atlanta. And I learned a lot of valuable lessons. And my most valuable lesson was that my relationship with my wife was the most valuable thing I have.
Mm. You know, that's true. When through good times and bad, financial is just a piece of your life. You realize what is important when you go through trauma. But on that note, because I know so many more people who have gone through foreclosures and who have declared bankruptcy, and where it used to be, I don't think you could come out of it as easily. Do you have percentages of, percent through markets that are going through this? And I have to think in the future when we do come back, maybe it won't be looked as negatively upon
I don't think it is.
Such large portion of our population.
Yeah, I don't think there's the stigma that there was maybe 10 years ago. When we were in New Orleans, I owned a number of pieces of rental property. I told you it was tough times in New Orleans in the 80s, and so I couldn't rent my properties. And those that were rented, a lot of the tenants couldn't afford to pay. So we had a lot of foreclosures on our record when we left New Orleans. And when I came to Atlanta, I had absolutely no problem getting a loan because I explained to them what happened in the economy in New Orleans, what I had done to overcome that, in other words, go to law school. And so when I came here to Atlanta, I had absolutely no problem getting a loan, buying another house. And right now, I'm not a loan officer, but I believe FHA will give somebody a loan 2 years after they declare bankruptcy. I believe that's correct. So there just isn't the stigma. There's a lot of people going through bankruptcy and foreclosure right now.
And maybe that's the right choice for you.
Yes.
Because some people try so hard to hold on. I don't know.
I agree.
Yeah.
I counsel a lot of people that go ahead and do it. It's tough, I know.
And get it behind you.
Yeah,
and
get it
start
behind
building.
you, move on. Once you do it, it's not as bad as it seems, and you can put it behind you. I can't tell you how many people come in there, and it's very emotional for me because it's very emotional for them.
Right.
And once they make the decision to move on, let their house go if that's what they need to do, declare bankruptcy if that's what they need to do, you can just see a complete change in the people.
Get your life back in order
Correct.
and rebuild, because there isn't the stigma that there was way back when, and in a few years everything is going to be different. And that brings me to our next population, which is the seniors, because you have some folks, or maybe even their children, who are in this predicament, and they have an aging parent and they don't know what to do, and they need to prepare because they're going to need to make tough decisions about their parents in the future. And how do you counsel them?
That's a tough one. And we talked about reverse mortgages, that's an option. But right now there's very little equity in a house. And the only way you can get a reverse mortgage is, A, you have to be over 62 years old, and you have to have equity in your house. But that's always an option.
So what do you think in our aging population, an aging couple that's struggling to hold on to their home, how would you recommend they go forward?
Yeah, each one's individual. Most of the people who come into my office are behind in their payments, can't afford the payments. What's appalling to me oftentimes is the lender won't work with them. Mm-hmm. If you'd like an example, I have a friend that built a very, very nice house, owed a lot of money on it. He owed $1.5 million on the house. He had put $600,000 of his own money in it. He could no longer afford the $1.5 million. So I went to the bank and he said, let's work something out. Let me pay interest only. Let's do something. And the bank absolutely refused to work with him. And so 14 months later, he hadn't made his payment in 14 months. 14 months later, the bank came to him and said, we'll agree to a short sale. So the bank ended up agreeing to take $750,000 on a short sale, rather than work with this man and take interest only or reduce his interest, anything, so he could stay in his house. He lost his house, lost $600,000. They were crushed.
Terrible. Yeah. I know more and more people with that same kind of story. Maybe moved here to Atlanta from the north, paid a huge chunk of cash for a house that they thought would be fine, and lost their job. Let's investigate reverse mortgages, because although some people don't have equity, you do have those maybe seniors who've been in their home for a long time and they're faced with an illness like dementia, and they have to make some tough decisions, maybe not today, but in the nearer future. How can a reverse mortgage work for them in their favor?
Well, I think if they have equity in their house, they're over 62 years old, I think it's an excellent idea, a reverse mortgage, because you don't have to pay it back. It's money that you can borrow and not pay back. And there's a number of different ways you can take the money. You can take the money as an equity line, you can take it as monthly payments, or you can take the money as a lump sum. And as long as you stay in the house as your principal residence, you have to pay taxes and insurance. You have to maintain the house. You don't have to pay the loan back. If you move out of the house, you have to sell the house and pay it back.
And so do you recommend that they take that in the lump sum, as you were talking about, or in the monthly payments? How do you normally counsel them?
It's really on an individual basis. I would say if they're disciplined people and they can take the lump sum, that's fine. If they're not, then I would take the monthly payments.
And, as we're talking about the aging population, if one of the spouse or their partner is stricken with an illness like, say, dementia, they may need additional help in the home in order to keep their loved one at home. And so a reverse mortgage is a good option for you if keeping your loved one in the home is what is most important. Or if you have to place them in an assisted living facility and you need money right away, maybe the lump sum is better.
Yes.
Okay, but these are options for you too if you or a loved one are faced with an illness that is going to debilitate over the next few years, up to 10 years. You can take it on a monthly basis.
Correct.
And use it to pay for additional in-home caregiving help.
Correct.
Or you can take it in a lump sum and help you get into an assisted living facility, whatever.
Correct.
Because, I've heard reverse mortgage. I've heard, oh, that's a terrible idea or that's a good idea. But you know what? If I live my whole life and I raise my children and I'm in my home and I have some equity, I'm going to do what I can to stay in my home.
I agree.
Okay.
It has gotten a bad rap, and I don't think it deserves it.
And why? Let's get rid of the misnomers. What is it that causes people to fear the idea of a reverse mortgage?
I think one idea is that initially it's expensive. The closing costs are expensive, origination fees are expensive. So some of the equity is gone in your house in the sense that you have to pay to get the loan. Mm-hmm. The good part that the government has done is that you're required to have counseling before you borrow money under the reverse mortgage. And if you can't afford to pay for the counseling, it has to be for free. So I think there's a place for reverse mortgages.
But, again, going back to the whole foreclosure and bankruptcy thing, sometimes it's better just to make the decision and move on. So how do you counsel, yes, reverse mortgage is right, or maybe it's time to sell your home and live more modestly, and that's the way you bring in the extra income?
Yeah, the first question is there any equity in the house? That's always the first question. And then the second one is, do you really want to keep the house? And then we discuss whether keeping the house is in their best interest emotionally. And then if we decide that foreclosure is the path, then I explain the process of foreclosure. Once they understand the process, it takes a lot of the fear away. Most people think that once the foreclosure process starts, they'll be out of their house in a week, and that's just not the case. It takes months.
Again, folks, for those of you that are just joining us right now, we are talking to attorney Paul Fleming about real estate law and what's going on in the real estate market and the benefits of reverse mortgage and making decisions regarding foreclosure and bankruptcy. But Paul, why don't we reach out and let them know how they can get in touch with you if they have more questions?
Paul Fleming, my telephone number is 770-933-0033, and my email is pgflegal.com.
And again, this show is called Better Living. And thank you very much for joining us today, because it's all about getting information and resources out to the folks in our communities to help them live better. This show is brought to you by the Homestead Hope Foundation and sponsored by Homestead Hospice. And that's why I talk a lot about the senior market, because, I think sometimes they're the forgotten population in our country, and the impact that they have faced due to the latest economic situation in our country, it hurts them as much as it hurts everyone in our population. They have no way to get out there and make more money. They're on a set budget now. They've contributed to society, raised their children, and unfortunately their children aren't in an economic situation where they can help. And so I like to talk about how we can help our seniors make the right decisions for them, to give them the choices that they need to make to live better. So thank you so much. What actually promotes someone to come to you? What is that final straw, and how can we help them make those decisions to make it easier for them?
I think most people wait too late to come to me, or any attorney. The sooner you get to an attorney, whether it's to look over a contract or make the decision to stop making the payments on your house, or whether you're deciding whether to declare bankruptcy or allow the lender to foreclose, I think the sooner you can get to an attorney, the more they can help. Usually the people I see are in the final stages of a foreclosure.
And so you think that if they came to you prior to that, you could have prevented that from occurring because there's other options out there for them?
Yeah, I don't know about prevent, but I can certainly cut down on the stress in their life.
Or maybe help them work with the lender?
My experience is not good working with lenders.
Really?
And I don't know too many attorneys, real estate agents, loan officers that are successful in working with lenders right now. It seems that the lenders would rather either foreclose or do a short sale than work with borrowers right now, which is a
I hate
shame.
to say it. It seems like the lenders see that things might be turning, so they want to grab as many houses as possible at the bottom of the market, right? Or
Yeah,
no?
I don't know.
Is that just pessimism at its worst?
I don't know what the rationalization is. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. When you have a debtor, and the example I just gave, that wants to keep his house, wants to make payments, wants to make the most payment he can to keep it, and the lender won't work with him at all and ends up taking 50 cents on the dollar, it made absolutely no sense to me. And I see examples like that all day long.
And you have people with great credit, too, that have to have their credit hit before the lender will even talk to them.
Yes.
Yeah, which is such a shame, because to get out of the economic situation that we're in this country, we have to keep people above the water.
Yes.
To put money into the economy.
And oftentimes lenders won't talk to a debtor at all if the debtor is current. And so oftentimes I tell the debtor, and I hate to do this, but I tell the debtor the only way you're going to get their attention is to stop paying. And as in the case that I was just talking about, it took 14 months of not paying before he got the lender's attention.
And so how long do you think it will take for him to get out of his bad credit situation and back on the road to being able to get money and be financially secure?
You can get an FHA loan unless things change, and there's constant changes in this market, which is another one of our big problems right now. There's no stability in the market, but I believe 2 years from foreclosure, he can get a loan. And he moved right into another house. He found a builder that was having problems, and he moved into the builder's, one of the spec houses of the builder, and he's making the payments on that house.
Let's talk about that too, because we might have folks that have owned a home for their entire life, raised their children like I talked about earlier. You know, is it better to sell and rent a home, or is it better to sell and buy another home that's just a smaller home? There's so many homes now that you can rent. The market, I mean, you can live just as well, but you have no ownership. But look what's happened with ownership anyway. You've lost all the equity. What do you really own at the end of the day?
A lot of people are not buying now because they don't know if we've hit the bottom, and I agree with that. I don't know when we're going to hit the bottom, if we've hit the bottom. And so I counsel people to wait until you're sure that properties are going up before you buy a house. I think now's a good time to rent.
Yeah.
If you lose your house, now's a good time to rent. Save your money. And in
take the 2 years, build your credit again, and you will.
Yeah.
And life will go on as planned.
Yeah, because a lot of people who come to me can't afford their house, but they're keeping everything else current. They're keeping their car current. They're keeping their credit cards current. Not all, but most. It's just the house has become overwhelming to them.
Okay. We only have a few more minutes until the show ends. I want to make sure to get the top most important things out there for folks to know. So what are the most common mistakes you see people make, and how can we reiterate what they should do to prevent themselves from making those mistakes?
Well, first of all, they're not alone.
They're not alone.
Yeah, they're not alone.
And it's not the stigma it used to be.
Right.
Don't label yourself and go into a deep depression. You're one of many now.
And it's not their fault. I mean,
And
there's
it's not
some
your
people who it is their fault, but the vast majority of the people that I see now are just good, wholesome people who have got caught up in a horrible economy. And so to me, the most important thing they have to understand is they're not alone. It's not their fault. This will pass. Make learned decisions, make the decision, and move on.
And
get it
seek
over
the
with.
advice of an appropriate real estate attorney in your area.
I think so.
Don't try to do it on your own with the lender.
No.
Because what do you see happening if they don't go and seek the advice of a real estate attorney?
Well, I think when you get an attorney involved, the lender is more apt to at least listen to the attorney. They don't act, but I think the most important thing is for the debtor to know the process. Once they understand the process of what's going to happen, the timeline that it's going to happen,
and
what
the different
they have to do.
options that you have, because people really don't know.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things lenders can do to stall the foreclosure or stall the dispossessory, the eviction of the property. I mean, they can always declare bankruptcy, and the bankruptcy stops the foreclosure. It's called an automatic stay. And so if the lender is foreclosing and the debtor needs more time, they can declare bankruptcy. And then once they get into bankruptcy, the debtor has to listen to the bankruptcy court.
And the other thing, I had a grandmother figure taking care of my children after school for a little while, and that was that. They sold their house in Florida. They came up here to Atlanta. They bought a very nice home in Atlanta, and then the economy fell down, and he lost his job, and the banks wouldn't work with them, and they were about to declare bankruptcy and foreclose on the house they couldn't sell in Florida. And the attorney advised them to go out and buy a car, which you wouldn't think about before you declare bankruptcy. Right?
Yeah.
And so there's lots of different idiosyncrasies and things that you don't think about, or is that not appropriate to say on a radio?
That's fine. They just have to realize they have to pay for the car.
Well, they have to pay for it.
It's not as if they can go out and buy a car on time.
But you're not going to get a loan for it if you declare bankruptcy right now. So
right.
this is that I would never have thought of. That's another reason why you want to go and see a real estate attorney, because they can maybe help you through the process as well
agree.
in ways you don't even think about.
I agree.
Well, why don't we shout out your phone number and your email address again so that if anyone needs help from a real estate attorney in the Atlanta market, they can give you a call. And I'm sure that you could farm them out to appropriate real estate attorneys in other markets if they needed. And again, this is Better Living, brought to you by the Homestead Hope Foundation and sponsored by Homestead Hospice. And one of the reasons for the Homestead Hope Foundation is to provide a one-stop shop for education. So they can always call us or go to our website at www.homesteadhopefoundation.org and we'll connect them to you and other real estate attorneys as well. So before we end, can you shout out your phone number and your email address as well?
Phone number is 770-933-0033, and the email is pjflegal.com, pjflegal.com.
And again, we've been talking to Paul J. Fleming, attorney at law, and you're located at 4040 Old Milton Parkway, Suite 100 in Alpharetta, Georgia.
Correct.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
I'm Jeannie Pete. Thanks for listening. Have a blessed day and week ahead, and listen here same time next week and every week. Homestead Hope Foundation is your resource for a healthy life. God bless.